Hey guys, Ezra here and welcome back to another videos, and on today's video I want to do like a retrospective review on the FNAF movie because next week is gonna be the official release of FNAF 2, which I cannot wait to see that. It seems like from the trailer it's gonna be like a fun movie. But I figure I want to talk about the first movie again, because I know that I did a spoiler review previously in 2023, but I feel like right now I want to make my point more clearer this time around because I did have some new thoughts on the movie. I might say again, I might say some similar stuff to my previous videos. I apologize, but this FNAF Fandom is a special franchise for me. It's a special franchise for this channel because I literally built the brand of the channel surrounding FNAF Freddy's, and I think a lot of my fans are FNAF Freddy's fans, and I think I want to talk about how the fan base react, when the movie came out, which I think is kind of annoying in my opinion, because I did have some criticism with the FNAF fan base and how overly positive they were, even though that this movie has so many problems in a way. And I want to make you I want to make it clear to some of you guys here, that I make this video not because I wanted to hate on Five Nights at Freddy's, because FNAF is such a special place in my heart because it's the first time I get to know YouTube, YouTubers and stuff like that, Markiplier, that's the first time I know about YouTubers as like, you could do it as a job essentially. And all of that thanks to Five Nights at Freddy's, way back in 2015, when I first discovered FNAF. And at the time, FNAF 4 was already came out, and it was, yeah, this franchise is literally my childhood, so this is a very, very special franchise for me. So, when I made this video, I just really wanted to criticize, why this movie is like disappointing for me. Because I waited 8 years for this movie since 2015, and just to see the final product turns into this is disappointing for me, and I want to elaborate on that on this video, and also honestly criticizing the fanboyism over FNAF in my opinion, because I think I've seen a lot of them, especially when the movie came out. So for the movie itself, I'm not trying to recap the entire plot because I think people already know that, but I'm going to talk about the positive thing first, just to get it out there. I won't be long because I said this before. The production design, I think, is amazing. The animatronics by Jim Henson Creature Shop, they look amazing. They're gorgeous. They look so accurate to the game. And the directing, I think, and the cinematography, I think, are pretty solid. I did like some of the shot from the first movie. I also like the performance, especially by Josh Hutcherson's. Like everybody else try with their performance, but I think Josh Hutcherson is got the best one, And for Matthew Lillard, I think he's okay because we barely seen Matthew Lillard in this movie, which is kind of insane that you get him into this movie and then he only appears in 2 scenes, which is pretty wild in my opinion. And also, I want to praise the score by the Newton brothers, especially the FNAF theme, and especially the opening credits, which I really, really like that, where they try to recreate the mini games visual, and then you just hear the theme, the music just blaring in the background. It was so amazing. I cannot wait to see how the Newton brothers will compose the opening scene of FNAF 2, because that they're gonna do some similar opening scene again, where this time around we're going to see the puppet in the second movie, definitely. And it will be really, really cool if they combine this theme and then mix that with the grandfather's clock, because that's like the puppet themes, I think they could do that in FNAF 2, which I cannot wait for that. So yeah, all of that is great, but let's get to the disappointing aspect of the movie, shall we? I want to talk about how the story was written and paced. I think the writing and the pacing of this movie has a huge problem because in one way it tries to be like a mystery movies, try to be like, oh, what the hell is happening, why did Mike dream all these kids and why did the animatronic came to life, and then eventually the movie has a big reveal scene between Mike and Vanessa, and the movie tries to, like, basically doing an exposition here saying that, oh, this is what actually happened. And to me, it feels so lame in my opinion, because I know that, again, I know people will say that, well, that's because, like, we're viewing this as a FNAF fans, right? So we already know the plot, the lore. Sure, but I feel like if I'm not a FNAF fan and I'm just like a general audience, I feel like the mystery was so obvious since the start, because they're already showing the ghost kid before Vanessa telling Mike, what happened to these kids. Like, I think we all already kind of like, I think the general audience will definitely predicting that, ever since that Mike see the ghost kids in his dreams, especially the ghost kids looks like the animatronics, so I think it's much more obvious there. And I feel like this movie also have the lack of like attempt, for trying to be like a good mystery movie, because I think like with Five Nights at Freddy's, it was well known for the mysteries, maybe not for us the hardcore fans, sure, I get that, but at the very least I wanted to see the movie to attempt to make like a better storyline and a better pacing in a way, because the pacing also is kind of weird, where they show the ghost kids first before Vanessa doing the monologue in the end, and I'm just like, well, we already know that, you don't have to be a FNAF fan to get the plot point in this movie. Like, it's not a mystery in my opinion. And I know that people will disagree with my take here, but I'm still standing by it, because I think there is a way for them to actually trying to make this into a good mystery movie. And the fact that this movie also lack of like tragic emotional elements, because again, the thing with Five Nights at Freddy's, we always know FNAF to be like, like as FNAF, just having fun and stuff like that. And it's a horror games for essentially for kids right now, way different from back in the day, where it feels like it tries to be, at least it tries to be scary, and it is scary for some people, including me, back in the day. But I feel like the movie never really attempt to be scary. It never really attempt to adapt the lore properly. I guess the lore is there, and I know people will say that it was adapted. Ezra, what are you talking about? Yeah, but I feel there is so many more tragic moments in the lore that if you actually really dissecting the lore, the story with William, with Henry and stuff like that. I know this is like the first movie, but I feel there could be something disturbing with how these kids are missing, because I think they do talk about missing kids in the movie, but it doesn't come across as like, oh, this is disturbing, like they don't really show like I guess the parents' emotion, or like how the community responded, to these missing kids. I think that was completely lacking in the movie, and I think that's a huge miss in my opinion, because I feel like they should show how the surrounding community and how the parents react, to the missing kids, and how traumatizing for them. I feel like that's how they should have done it. And I know that this murder or missing kids happens like way back in the day, sure, but I feel like if they did talk about that in their surrounding community, it kind of I think it could improve the emotional aspect of the storyline, because again, if you really dissect the FNAF lore, it's actually pretty disturbing, and it's actually pretty sad in a way. It's pretty emotional. So I think the movie doesn't necessarily get to that point yet. And I know that this is the first movie, but I think, in my opinion, that's how you fix that. Showing how the community and how the parents of the missing kids reacted to the situation. That maybe many years later, the parents still hurts from that and still remembers from that. Which Mike's parents, which kind of shows that Mike's parents already were affected by that. But again, it happens off screen. So I was like, okay, well, it was like, okay, it was in a case where they just tell you instead of like showing you, and that's the big problem also in it, because I think they should show Mike's parents, having a breakdown and eventually like breaking apart the entire family, because Mike just told this story to Vanessa, and I feel like to me that's way less effective. I think we need to show the emotional breakdown of Mike's parents, because it was right there, it was mentioned, and the parents was actually, well, there is an actor that plays them, so I feel like they should have like used them again to film a scene where we see the parents actually breaking up, and breaking up the entire family, where Mike eventually has to take her sister and then eventually fend for his own now, because the parents are just completely breaking down from the situation. Are those situations gonna come back in FNAF 2? I don't think so. I mean, well, it could be if they really want to, but I think at this point, I don't know. I feel like they're not going to continue that, but yeah, I feel like there's a lot of stuff where they just like tell you instead of like showing you, So that's one way, I think, in my opinion, how they could improve the emotional aspect of the storyline. And also, speaking of the scares, like I said before, this movie is not scary. And I know that people said that, oh, Final Fantasy wasn't that scary, right? Sure. But the one thing that FNAF are always known is the jump scare. And this movie is very, very lacking of that. There is like 2 jump scare with freaking Balloon Boy. And it's not even the animatronic Balloon Boy. No, it's like a fucking, I don't know, merchandise or like Funko Pop of Balloon Boy that appears in a closet. One's in the lockers, and then one of them in the supply closet. Like, they have 2 jump scares, and that technically third. If you count like the jump scare with Corey, in the mid credit scenes. So I guess there's that. But I feel like that's just like a really, really lame jump scare. Why would you do that? I think it's kind of surprising to see Balloon Boy in the movie. Because obviously it's a teaser for a sequel. But I think, in my opinion, that was just like a very, very lame jump scare, man. Really, Balloon Boy jump scare twice. And I guess there is a third jump scare with Foxy, where he runs down the hall, which I think, okay, that's cool. I guess cool looking, just like in the game. But that's it. There's barely any jump scare in this movie. And I know this is a movie instead of like a game, I get that. But I feel like for a movie, I was expecting, for a FNAF movie, I was expecting a lot more jump scare in this movie compared to just like a lame jump scare with Balloon Boy twice, or three times. And then Foxy jump scare, which I think you kind of see it coming, that he's gonna run through the hallway. So there's it. So yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's not very scary. It's not even attempting to create a jump scare in the movie, because I think that was just very, very lame in my opinion. So yeah, there's that. And also I want to criticize. I said this before, I think, on my previous FNAF movie review way back in 2023. I really upset that Mike doesn't even do his job properly. He just go to the places and sleeps, and that's it. So there's that. And there is not even a scene where Mike has to defend himself against the animatronics, inside the office, because I know that eventually he has to defend himself and Abby from the animatronics, I get that, but it was very different. I was expecting to be like a FNAF, like, where he's stuck in the office and he has to use the camera to track down the animatronics and have to like plan his escape. I was expecting that in the movie because like that's to remind me of the game, right? But he never really do that, and I think, obviously this leads to one of my favorite scene of the movie, where we see a bunch of goons breaking into the pizzeria and destroying the place, even though the place already shit looking in the first place. But okay, sure, you can destroy that further. And then this is one of my favorite scenes, because we finally see the animatronic in action. Finally, because this entire time we barely seen the animatronic doing anything in this movie, except the opening, which I think, again, the opening sequence and act one of the movie, I think are good, they're good setups. And I think the opening are really effective with the security guard, which I heard that it was supposed to be for Markiplier, but Markiplier is doing his movie Iron Lung, so he can't exactly commit to do this cameo. I'm hoping Markiplier was in the second movie, because like that guy is responsible so much, the king of FNAF, responsible for much for how popular the FNAF franchise become, so I'm hoping that Mark can be in the second movie as a cameo, hopefully. But yeah, for the first movie, the opening is good, and I think besides that, and this scene right here where we see like a bunch of teenagers breaking into or like people breaking into the pizzeria, that's the only two scenes where we see the animatronic kind of like become active, I guess. And I guess technically in the third act they're also kind of active, but like, again, they're not threatening, they're not exactly scary in my opinion, and it's just so disappointing in my opinion. And I think I brought this as an example before, where I think the FNAF fan movie, by Bubblegum Monster, actually did a better job to actually make the animatronic much more scarier. Especially the scene that I keep referencing is actually where we see the security guard trying to like hide from the animatronic, and then as he locks down the room, he sees Bonnie in his window, and that was actually a very, very scary scene. And I think there's also like a mistake here where the office in this movie doesn't look like the game. And at first, when they announced that the office will be looking different, I was like, well, maybe because again they can't exactly adapt the office exactly like in the first movie, the first game, right? So I get that, but I feel like right now, looking back at it, I almost kind of wish they just like adapt the office exactly like in the game, because on that way they could like not only give like an accurate looking office, but also creating some intense moment with Mike, like you using the mechanic from the game. Because so far there is no exactly like a power problems. I guess technically there was a power problems in the building, but it's not exactly like related to like, oh, like you need to spare your powers. You're not using the camera or like using the door to like stay away from the animatronics. Like that's what makes the first game intense. And there was all that mechanics was completely missing in this movie, and to me that was disappointing. And speaking back to the scene, I guess we see one character looking to the camera and trying to like find where the animatronic was. And yeah, like this, I cannot believe that out of all the characters, this random character that like breaking into the pizzeria is the one that actually kind of using the camera to track where the animatronic was, just like in the game. Mike's never did that, which is so weird in my opinion, and I think that's a huge misstep in my opinion. So yeah, and this is where we also get some kills. So I think that's good. Finally, we also get the bite of 2000, I guess. We know where we see the girl getting dragged into like the Freddy Fazbear mouth and then like breaking in half. That was a cool kill. I like that. And I also remember seeing the audience reaction to that scene, where everybody just screaming, "Was that the bite of 87?" It's like it was fun. But yeah, I think besides that, I don't really like how they handle the animatronics in this movie, because I think this movie lack momentum with the storytelling, because it takes so long before something actually fucking happen with the storyline. The opening, the act one is great. It's a great setup in my opinion, but after that, it just like it got so long before we actually get to see something interesting in my opinion. Because I was expecting to see that every single night is gonna be more and more intense for Mike. But that's not what we get. It was just like, okay, I mean, every night feels kind of the same for him until like the very last night, where we actually see him trying to break into the pizzeria and try to save Abby. I guess there is that. But I think besides that, it's just like, yeah, like there's nothing much happening in this movie. And I think the movie kind of like the energy and the fun part, for the animatronics, And I also want to mention, I really hate the scene where we see the animatronics building like a, I don't know, like a camp or something like that with Abby. They're trying to be nice to him, and I get the purpose of the scene. I completely get that. But to me, this whole scene where the animatronic are being nice, it kind of gives me the SFN FNAF vibes. Literally when I first watched that in theaters, my heart sank when I see that. Because I was finally expecting it. Because oh wow, Abby was actually in the pizzeria. Wow, finally, maybe we finally see the animatronic are trying to kill Mike, because this whole time they don't really do anything with him. So like, okay, I guess they're trying to get Abby. I get that, but I feel like I don't know. It's still again lack momentum. And when I see the animatronic are being nice to Abby, I was like, oh really? Like we're doing SFM FNAF now in the movie? Like come on, man. At least for me, because it's just. Again, I wanted to see the animatronic are actually being scary and try to terrorize the character. And I get it, they're trying to get Abby, but I'm just like, well, she was right there. They could just grab her and then like put her in like a suit or whatever. I don't know what they're trying to do with her, but I feel like she was right there. Why not just grab her? Sure, there's like four of them, and there is like again, Mike at this time, he has no idea what the animatronic weaknesses was, because in the third act we found out that they essentially using like a control shock, just like in the game, to shock the animatronics. Let's motivate them with a control shock. So like I guess that's a reference to sister location, sure, I guess, but it kind of makes the animatronic going down way too easy in my opinion. But yeah, like in this scene, they could have just grabbed Abby, right? Like does she have to come willingly to them? Because in the fifth night, we see that Abby did came along willingly to the pizzeria, sure. But eventually, like Chica just like forcing her to this like suit or whatever. Like that's it. Eventually, she has to be forced inside this suit. So I'm just like, well, why not just grab her there? Why even bother trying to be nice to her? There is four of you. Like surely Mike can, surely they can like I don't know, strangle or even killing Mike. Considering that at this point of the storyline, Mike doesn't even know the weaknesses of the animatronic. He doesn't know that this taser can actually bring down the animatronics, until the third act, So I'm just like, I don't get it, the purpose of this scene. It was stupid in my opinion. So I'm hoping that the second movie doesn't have a scene where the toy animatronics are trying to be nice to the kids, and that's it. They just leave them alone. It would be really a cool twist, if they're trying to be nice and then just like kills them, because that's what I wanted to see from the animatronics, because I get it that this is like a like a spirit of the kids that was trapped inside the animatronic, but it was revealed that they were controlled by William Afton, at least in this movie. So I think it's kind of weird for me that they're waited this long just to get Abby, So I don't know. But yeah, I think, as you can tell, I am very, very disappointed with this movie. I waited 8 years, and this is what I got, and it just like, yeah, it just, I don't know, man. I was expecting more from the movie. I think at the very least, I wanted the movie to attempt to create some emotional moments, to create some jump scares because it's FNAF, to give more scenes with the animatronics, try to be more scary, more active this time around, and bringing some of the game mechanics in the movie, instead of just like referencing them offhand. And yeah, I think overall for me the movie is very very disappointing, and I know that a lot of people will disagree with me, especially the FNAF fanboys. They definitely disagree with me, but in my opinion, to me, I was like, yeah, it's such a disappointment, man. I remember watching it for the first time. I kind of have to force myself to be engaged with the storytelling, especially on the second half of the movie, because again, barely anything happens in the storyline. It was quite disappointing how they pace the storytelling, in my opinion, how they handle the animatronics, and how they handle the scares. So yeah, overall disappointing. But for the second movie, I'm really hoping that they actually upping the funness part of it, and then upping the animatronic scenes, because I think like this time around the toy animatronics are going to around the town to kill people. So I'm just like, okay, fine, at least there's something they could do in the movie and make it much more engaging. And they also have a higher budget, so I have faith on the FNAF 2 movie. I think it's gonna be better and much more fun than this movie. That's what I'm expecting for FNAF 2. I'm not expecting like a masterpiece of storytelling, no, but I was hoping that the second movie would at least be much more engaging compared to the first movie. So yeah, there's that. So let's talk about the fan base of FNAF, and how they react to this situation in the first place. When the FNAF movie was released. Because a lot of these reactions are kind of annoying for me, because you can tell this are coming from the fanboys of FNAF Fandom. And I get it that we all love this franchise, including me, but even for me, who is a FNAF fan, I'm still allowed to criticize the movie. I'm still allowed to feel, disappointed, instead of like turning a blind eye and just like blindly saying that the movie is fun, I don't care, is a masterpiece, is a 10 out of 10, because like a lot of people say it was a 10 out of 10 for them, and it was just like so weird for me. It was so annoying, because I feel like they don't have any standard at all, in my opinion. Because for me, even though I was a big fan of Five Freddy's, I still have standards. I want this movie to be good, at least this movie attempting to be good objectively instead of like subjectively. Because if you're talking this movie subjectively, then I think you're just gonna love it regardless, because you're a FNAF fans. And I think the sentiment that I got from how the fans respond to the movie for the first time in 2023, it feels like they're just saying that, oh, the movie is good, because they're saying the movie is good because they're a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's. It's almost like giving the impression that, oh, you're a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, so you have to like this movie. That's the impression that I got. Maybe that's not what they were saying. Maybe that's not what they're trying to give the impression of. Sure. But for me, it feels like that's what I feel. It just like, it feels like if you're a FNAF fan, then you have to love this movie, and I disagree with that. And I feel there's a lot of things that you can criticize with the first movie. And again, you can still love the franchise and still try to criticize the product. You don't have to absolutely love everything from the FNAF franchise just because you're a fan. I'm a fan, and I'm still criticizing how the franchise went right now. That it feels like it's went completely different direction, which is fine, sure, but it's also not for me, in my opinion. And I was expecting the movie to be better. I'm making this video because I want the movie to be better. And I did feel frustrated, like 8 years, and this is what I got. It's just like, come on, man, And for the second movie, it seems that they are listening to some of the criticism, at least that's what they said. And at least from the trailer, again, the animatronic are much more active. Seems like it's gonna be much more fun for the second time around, which I cannot wait for that. I don't know about the storytelling of the second movie, I don't know if it's going to be improved or not. But they said they're listening to the criticism, so hopefully they did try to pace the movie much better in the second movie, because again, when you are making a movie, you need that momentum in your storytelling. Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, they have to completely build off each other. This first movie doesn't have that, so that's why it's kind of disappointing for me. And I think the fans are completely ignoring that. Where I remember watching the Brain League podcast, before they stopped, with Jacksepticeye and Ethan Nestor, where Jack and Ethan criticized the FNAF movie, and they're pretty much saying what I was thinking, and I was so glad, like, these two actually trying to be honest. But when I go to the comment section, all of the comments that I read is literally just like, oh, this movie is fun, this movie is fun, this movie is fun, I like it, I like it, I like it. That it's like these people are like spamming the comment section saying the exact same shit. And it's really kind of annoying for me that there's like so little people like actually listen to what Jack and Ethan actually saying, and it's just saying that, oh yeah, that's your opinion. I love the movie. I like the movie. It's so much fun for me. And like, it's like they don't even bother trying to like process the information that was given by Jack and Ethan, because in my opinion they're trying to be fair with their review. They're not viewing this as a fanboy of FNAF. They're just viewing this as an audience, of FNAF. Um, and it was like, yeah, it was so annoying how the fans kind of like blindly love the movie, and not like, not trying to criticize the movie at all, because like that behavior you can find them immediately when you have a YouTuber trying to criticize the FNAF movie, and you go to the comment section, you're definitely gonna find that type of comment, where they said that, oh, the movie is fun, I don't care, like it's just so, in my opinion, it was so ignorant, like again, you can still criticize it. You can still be a fan of a franchise, and you can still criticize the product. You can still want a better product, even though you've been a fan of it for like almost 10 years, and it's for me, maybe 11 years for so many people here, right? So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully in the second movie, I mean, the second movie is is definitely gonna be the same, where the FNAF fanboys, kind of like Doko, for example. I love Doko, don't be wrong, I still love his channel, but I don't really watch his review anymore, because I just know that this dude just loves everything with FNAF. So I'm just like, well, there's no point watching someone who loves everything with FNAF, like, because it adds nothing to the conversation. You just love it. Okay, cool. So in my opinion, even his review with FNAF movie, he doesn't even criticize the movies slightly. At least with the non-spoiler review that I watched, he just said, "Oh, the movie is fun. The movie is good." And when I was watching that movie, I was like, "Man, there's so many problems. This movie has so many problems." And I was surprised that Doko doesn't even mention anything with FNAF movie, which is like, damn, like he doesn't even bother mentioning anything negative with the movie, which is like, oh man, okay. I guess again that's where the fanboyism kind of like coming in, So yeah, I don't know. Again, being a fanboy is not a good thing, in my opinion. And I know this will be like a controversial take, especially for the FNAF fandom. I get that. I'm sorry for saying this, but that's my opinion. Because I feel like I can still love a franchise, but I don't want to be a fanboy. Because if you are a fanboy, then you just love everything that came out from the franchise. Let it be Final Freddy's, could be Final Fantasy VII, could be like a fighting game or whatever. That, like, again, you're just becoming lame because you just love everything that came out, But in reality, the situation said otherwise, So like, I don't know, man. I feel that it's very easy. It's very easy to understand why the critics and some of the people of the fandom doesn't like this movie, including me. I don't think it's that hard to understand why, I have a problem with this movie. I don't think it's a rocket science to understand that. So I'm just asking for the FNAF fans, that if you're listening again, it's okay to love the franchise, but it's also okay to criticize the product. If the product was bad, you're allowed to criticize that, especially if you're a fan. Then show that you want standard in your own franchise. And I think that's what the FNAF franchise has been pretty lacking, in my opinion, where I think the standards just kind of like went down, especially when the game was made by Stillwell. I feel like the magic of FNAF is kind of gone for me, in my opinion. Like, even Secret of the Mimic, I wasn't even like engaged with the storyline. I wasn't even finished like seeing the entire game. Yeah, it's been like what, 4 months or 5 months after the game was released. It's like, yeah, it's been a long time, and I haven't finished Secret of the Mimic. That's how I feel about the current status of FNAF. I know this is a fun game, sure, but even then, so I was like, it's kind of like missing the secret sauce, or the secret ingredient for FNAF, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that's all I can say about how the fan base of FNAF. That I know this video is probably, if this video actually got traction, that I think the FNAF fan base will be very, very pissed at me for saying those kind of words, because I know that it could be hurtful for criticizing something that you like. I've been there before, where somebody criticized my favorite franchise or favorite video games. I get that. But as I grow up, I understand that people have different opinions. And I understand that when people criticize the product, it's not like it's not making them automatically like a hater of the franchise, but rather they just want the standards. That's it. And that's what I wanted. I want the standards with the FNAF movie. I want the movie to be good, instead of just like, oh, here's the FNAF movie made for the fans, and then like, yeah, it's for the fans, just for the fans, they can just enjoy it, right? But I'm just like, I'm a fan of FNAF, and I don't enjoy that. It feels like so, weird how some fan base are like viewing certain movies, because, oh, it was made for the fans, so we're supposed to love it. I'm just like, no, man, I disagree. I completely disagree, So because I heard that word thrown a lot, in the FNAF discussion way back in 2023, where it's like, well, it was made for the fans, So like, yeah, who cares? It's fun, right? So like, I don't know, man. That to me feels like a bullshit argument, where it was made for the fans, so you have to love it. Like, no, nah, you're still allowed to criticize that. So yeah, either way, guys, that's my thought about the FNAF movie again, and how I view the FNAF fan base when they respond to the movie. And I think it's kind of unfortunate, because I feel like that kind of like that feeling, where you have to love everything. First of all, it feels boring, but I also think that it also give the wrong message to the filmmaker, where they just saw that, oh, the fans love it, so like, who cares, right? It was successful at the box office, which it does. So it's like, who cares about criticism? That's what my worry was, until I read the article saying that, oh, like they actually listened to the criticism for the second movie and they tried to improve over that. So okay, I'm glad they're actually listening, and I think from the trailer it seems that they listened, that people wanted to see more of the animatronic in action, or at least I tried to be more active in a way. That's what I'm trying to say. And obviously the second movie are giving more of that, so that's cool. So yeah, I guess that's it for the video, guys. I guess let me know, guys, in the comment section below, and please be nice if you can. I know that people are probably angry about how I criticized the movie and the FNAF fan base in a way. I get it. I'm sorry, but I have to be honest with my opinion. I'm sorry if this hurts you. But still, you can let me know in the comment section below. Like, what do you guys think about the first FNAF movie? Especially watching it. Is it actually as good as you remember, or are you guys actually as like me, where I found the movie to be pretty disappointing? And what do you guys think about how the fan base are responding to the FNAF movie came out? How do you guys feel about the people just saying that it was made for the fans, so you have to love it, or like they just like spamming the exact same stuff, where it was like it's fun and they just loving it and kind of like blindly loving it without seeing the problem of the movie and just giving it a 10 out of 10 just like that, just because it's FNAF, so let me know, guys, how do you guys feel about that part of the fandom in the FNAF fan base, but yeah, and be civil about it, please. And yeah, stay tuned for more movie reviews in the future, guys, especially FNAF 2 movie review, maybe next Wednesday, but I guess we'll see if the schedule line up, because it was supposed to be released on December 3rd on my country, Indonesia, which is like 2 days earlier. Make sure to bite that subscribe and like button, share the videos to show stuff, and stay tuned for more reviews in the future. Stay tuned for the FNAF 2 movie reviews in the future. And again, I hope you guys enjoy this movie review and retrospective review, and I will see you guys in the next one then. Bye.